You got 5, you have enough. Well, 6 actually, so yeah, you're more than enough, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Okay, the roll call, we have 3 that are not in attendance. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda as submitted? Doak?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes from the previous meeting.
Okay, and Joanne? And Joanne second. All in favor of approving the agenda and the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, they are approved. Public comment, there is no one from the public here, so we will move on to the unit manager reports.
Choose whenever you'd like, Madam Chair.
Okay, okay, which unit manager would like to come forward first? Okay.
I don't think you're on yet.
Thanks, Jeff. All right. I'm Melissa from Human Services, the supervisor of the Family and Long-Term Care Unit. So I just handed out the packet that includes the blue charting with the monthly numbers for you. You can take a look at those and let me know if you have any questions. I also included at the back, it's a colorful flyer that is focused on children's long-term support. I just wanted to provide that to you because it was a nice family-friendly format that talks about all of the different services that are connected to the waiver program. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better understanding of all of the things that the waiver program offers to the families that we serve. Just general overviews of the programs that I oversee. So for waiver, exciting news, the wait list has officially been eliminated as of today. With that being said, though, I do have some that are kind of in the works in that assessment process. So we'll have to see what comes of those, if they will be added to the wait list and then served soon, or perhaps they may not be functionally eligible for programming. And then we continue to work with Sue and Corinne's units to assess for service needs of any of the consumers that they're working with. In birth to 3, things have been pretty stable. This past month has been busy working on our county performance plan that was completed in February. It takes a lot of time and effort to put that together, and our birth to 3 coordinator, Carol, does a fantastic job with pulling that all together and seeking guidance from DHS as to what should be included in that plan. So for next year, we're going to be looking at what we can do to continue to better serve our consumers. Want to make sure that we're on top of child find so that all of our littles in the community that need birth to 3 services are being served by us. We are looking at COVID implications and what we can do to better serve our consumers as a result of COVID experiences. Always looking at social emotional needs as well now. Trying to improve family engagement in the program. And then we're always trying to enhance our best practice of utilizing the primary coach approach to teaming, which is the mode of serving our birth to 3 families. In CST, or coordinated services teams, things are fairly stable there. We have 1 consumer on the wait list. We do have a coordinator that's assigned to that family. We're just waiting for them to commit to moving forward with the process. But in general, with the CST program, we're looking at compassion, resiliency, doing what we can to evaluate staff morale. We've had a bit of some turnover again, so we want to really make sure that we're supporting our staff as they work with our very difficult cases that come through, and just taking a look at our general system of care. In adult protection, February was a little bit slower, which allowed Jody, our APS staff, to kind of follow up on January cases that had been coming through. The numbers were high in that month. So she was able to tie some of those up. And then Jody also works on the transportation assessments. And those have really been picking up end of February, beginning of March. So it's nice that she was able to work on some of those assessments for that program. As a segue into transportation, we have worked as a team to figure out what options we want for our 5310 grant van that we'll be receiving. So that application started back in 2019. The van we were awarded the grant, and then the van has been ordered, and we're just working on some of those options that will be needed to better serve the consumers that utilize the wheelchair accessible van that we'll be getting. So the van is a bariatric vehicle, so it'll allow for a little bit more room for the consumers that we're transporting. It will allow for 6 ambulatory and 1 wheelchair position. So we're hoping that that'll be delivered before summer. Questions on anything I presented or the forms? Joke?
Could you describe the waiver? Just doesn't describe what this program does. Could you describe how this works from the payment standpoint? Is this supported by the state, or how does that work?
So there's federal and state funding for children's waiver, and then there is a match as well. 53,000, I think, is our local match for the entire program. And then there's a third-party billing system called WPS, which our vendors bill the cost of services to WPS and are reimbursed. And then we do that as well for case management. That's how we collect some of the revenue connected to the program. And then there are some costs of services for like specialized medical supplies or adaptive aids that are purchased through like big box stores or larger vendors. We purchase it and then we're able to collect for that on the back end.
So the federal and state covers about how much percentage of the cost of that waiver program?
I'm looking to Brian here. I don't know how that breakdown goes. It used to be, there's been a big change. I think you've heard me talk about it towards the end of last year. So it used to be that the kids were broken down into different categories. So some of the kids were fully funded if they had an autism slot. Some of them were 60-40, depending on which slot they got. So as of the first of the year, though, there was a huge switch in which the state changed all of that and said that the kids will be 100% supported with the exception of our local match that's required, that 53,000.
Okay, thank you.
Joanne?
So I'm just wondering about with the transportation program, if we're going to be getting back some of our drivers once they have their 2 vaccinations. And also, is there other brainstorming on getting more drivers? Because I know how significantly low we are.
Yeah. So even prior to COVID, we struggled with recruiting drivers, volunteer drivers. We're hoping that some will be coming back once they're fully vaccinated. Some, though, are experiencing health concerns or, have travel planned, things like that. We always have to kind of brainstorm and work our way around that. As far as recruiting new drivers, we actually were attempting to recruit some through the vaccine clinics. So we provided some of the brochures to public health, and they were passing some of those out to individuals who are going to get vaccines. So we're hoping to perhaps get a few out of that route. Otherwise, we do some advertising with the local churches and bulletins, the senior scenes, things like that. We tend to have the best luck with word of mouth. And historically, advertising for volunteer drivers has also caused an increase in people requesting transportation. So we advertise for drivers, which is advertising for the program. So we end up with more people looking for rides than people willing to drive. Other questions?
Okay, thank you. And move on. Corinne?
Okay. Oh, you know what? I'll hand out my report actually.
Unless it's new, I handed it out for you. Thanks.
Okay, since Scott is on top of that, I won't hand out my report. Corinne Conkle, CPS and youth justice and random other things that we pick up along the way. I don't have anything significant to share this month. We are experiencing, I think, steady numbers when it comes to reports and new referrals, a bit of an increase that we're absorbing minus a worker. I've certainly shared my frustrations about needing to recruit and hire again, but we will be doing that. We've selected some candidates, I think, that are good candidates, and we will be doing interviews on the 29th of March for the one position we have open, and possibly, if we have good candidates, filling both positions that we have open in our unit. We did not have new placements this month, so that is a good thing. I'll piggyback again on what Melissa said about the continuing teamwork that goes on between units that causes certain referrals that come into the CPS and youth justice unit to not blossom into full-blown out-of-home placements. And we are experiencing that with another family right now, just the way that those programs can work together to keep children from out-of-home care. We're pretty much through end of year reporting. There's one more that's due the end of March, so we'll be completing that. But outside of those things, I don't have anything additional to share.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for her? Okay. Not, then we'll move on to Brian.
Good morning. We sent out the financial packet for January, and January is not a lot of information to really be able to project or see how we're going to do at year end. We're way too far out. All I can say is if you have any questions on the first four reports, to kind of let me know. I'll kind of go through them real quick. The billing report, we are up in billing and keeping up to speed on that. State aid report for the first month, or actually the first quarter, we should get close to 100% of what we claim. And then some of the limits start kicking in that we have to hold off for a while to receive more money on that. Contract status report is where it's at. I don't think we have anything new this month to approve. And again, the projections are at a 12-month projection. So you might see some colors in the far right-hand corner, but that's if we keep at the same pace January through December, which is rare. So those will change throughout the year. And the vendor payments, those came in at 153,000 for the year, back to kind of our monthly average. So nothing in there was really outstanding. Attached should be all the financial or the credit card reports for the unit managers for the month of February. And then if we look at the financial reports, again, this is for 1 month of January. If we look at 1/12, we're looking at 8.3% is our percent to the budget. A lot of the expenses for January have been pushed back into 2020 where they belong. So we don't have a robust expense number there. And as we go through, not a lot to note. We did apply the tax levy for 2021 of 1.8 million. So that always makes us look good for the first few months. And as we go through, nothing, about the only thing notable to report is we will be having a Winnebago charge in crisis, which didn't come through this month, but for January, it looks like it's going to be about 53,000. So that came after I did these reports. But that does not have any of the Medicare reimbursements that will also be offset against it in later months. And Otherwise, if we go down to the bottom, we are with a goal of 8.3%. We had 4.7% revenues under the goal, and our expenses were 4.5. So for January, typical January, I would say nothing outstanding there. We are working on the reconciliations and final cleanup of 2020 in the next month. So we will be submitting all our final reports for cars and sparks, and we're doing other reconciliations throughout the month for other programs. So by next month, we should have a good handle of what our audit financials will be at, because the audits come in May. So we should have everything fairly well set in where we're going to be. I'm anticipating, based off of last month, we're still in line to come in anywhere between 850 and 875 to the positive. So any questions? Okay.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Okay, approval of provider contracts.
There are none.
Okay, then we'll move on to resolution supporting Aging and Disability Resource Center.
And Supervisor Teskey may be able to add on to what I have had. Within the state budget, there is a proposal for additional funding for the Aging and Disability Resource Centers. And I know that Supervisor Teskey serves on that board with Manitowoc County and Kewaunee County. And there's been a request that this committee therefore recommend this resolution to the county board so that it can be sent to the governor and our state legislators, expressing our support for additional funding for the ADRCs. I've done a very broad brush, but Supervisor Teskey, if you want to add, please feel free.
You're doing okay, Scott. I know that Kathy Lee from the ADRC in Manitowoc, along with another group of people, had a study committee on this, and they've been working on this for a long time already. So and now it finally is coming to fruition with a resolution. So I'm hoping that our Human Services Board will approve the resolution so that we can get it over to the governor's office.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, another part of it is it mentions the inequity in there between distribution. I might have this a little off, but when the ADRCs were first started in the state, then the first ones that came in actually get more dollar funding than the second group that came in, which get less, and then a third group that came in get even less of a percentage, which to me makes no sense. So that will be revised as well then in there.
Okay, are there any other questions? If not, could I get we're going to do a motion then to bring it to the full council. Could I get the motion?
So
Tim-
moved.
Tim makes a motion. Is there a second? Doak, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Then presentation, corporate counsel and its partnership in human services.
Thank you. You're moving on quickly. I thought I had more time to enjoy my coffee. But good morning. My name is Jeff Wisnicki. I'm the corporation counsel for the county. Mr. Felt was kind enough to invite me to say a few words about how my office works with the Human Services Department to help serve their clients. As corporation counsel, very briefly, I'm basically the county's attorney. I'm the county's in-house attorney. It's my job to advise, provide advice and counsel to the county board, to the county administrator, to the heads of departments, to all the boards and commissions, similar to the Human Services Board. And I'm also, as part of that job, I'm also the representative for the public when Human Services wants to bring matters to court. So I represent Human Services in court for their various when they want to come to court for their various programs. Generally speaking, you may or may not know this. I would say Human Services is probably my largest client. So if my office is a law firm, Human Services is probably my largest client. Probably second would be maybe Scott in the administrator's office. He has me running around chasing my tail quite a bit. And then maybe the sheriff's department and so on. But I'm strictly from the corporation counsel perspective, Human Services certainly is my largest client. I work with I'll call them the three big units, the Children and Families Unit, Family and Community Services, who I forget the name of, and Behavioral Health. Those are the big three units I work with the most. Probably between Children and Families and Behavioral Health 1 and 2, and then Family and Community Services probably 3. Though sometimes that does change. I do also work with the administrative and financial, or the financial group. Primarily, I help Dan out, Dan Vincent. Every year we need to put together the purchase of service agreement for all our various our providers. So we have to put together annual contracts. So I work with him on that annually as well, and any other issues that come up from time to time. Specifically with the various units, I'll discuss with the Children and Families group. I think I talk with someone in their office probably at least once a day about some of the issues they're working on. In court, we do the CHIPS matters. That's the Children in Need of Protection and Services. So if there's some situation where they need to come to court, I would handle that. TPR, terminating parental rights. I'm also, my job is unique, and then I'm also the assistant district attorney. So I also handle the matters that would normally be assigned to the district attorney's office. That would be like the delinquency matters. When a juvenile engages in criminal behavior, it's called delinquency. I handle those as an assistant district attorney. I also handle the JIPS, that's the Juveniles in Need of Protection of Services. Those are all technically DA cases, but I handle those for Kewaunee County. But moreover, and besides the court interaction, we do have frequent discussions about cases and how we should proceed and what's the best course of action to take. Obviously, if our Children and Families group feels it's appropriate, they take children into custody. They don't call me first and ask me. They just take them into custody. And then we have to take that to court within 48 hours to have the court review that action. Behavioral health. The primary driver there is the mental health commitments. So when people are out there in the community are suffering from mental health, we can go to court and seek a mental health commitment. Now, a lot of people are confused about that process. They think somehow if we do a mental health commitment that we are putting someone in an institution. And, that's certainly part of it. But what a mental health commitment is, it's an order to the court. That they're under the supervision of the Kewaunee County Department of Human Services. So part of that may include inpatient at for instance, Bellin Psychiatric Facility or Willow Creek or Winnebago. That might be part of it, and usually that's where it starts. But that's not where it ends. We try to get them out of there because, as Brian indicated, it's very expensive. Last month, $53,000 at Winnebago. We try to get them out of there as soon as we can. Our behavioral health team. And they try to supervise them in the community with therapy, counseling, et cetera, medication management. So I do help the behavioral health unit with the mental health commitments. With the Family Community Services Group, one unit they have within there is the Adult Protective Services. Ms. Vandervest, she's another frequent client of mine, or customer, if you will. And Corinne deals with the children in need of protection services. Jody is on the other end, the Adult Protective Services, so elder adults. It starts at 60. So we work with Jody, and it seems like our community is aging. So it seems like from when I started till now, I started in 2007 till now, it seems like that area, it seems like every year it seems to be more and more. So I'm just observing that in my experience, it seems like it's increasing. We have a number of elders out there who obviously they want to stay in their homes. We have a number of elders out there who have financial means. I mean, they worked their whole life, they retired, they have money. So, you have frail elderly in their who want to stay in their homes, and they have money, and you have a lot of people out there who want to get their money, scams and unscrupulous family members and so on. So obviously, first and foremost, we got to make sure our elders are safe out there, that they can be in their home, or do they need to have for instance, a guardianship established where someone's making decisions for them, or do they need to be put in some sort of placement? Obviously, nursing home would be the most restrictive example, but are there other placements that person should consider? But then on top of all that, then we always have to worry about these financial financial abuse or emotional abuse or just generally neglect. There's some folks out there who aren't being well taken care of. So we work with Jody with those issues. So those are the big 3 units I think I covered. But what's interesting is, so we have, the three main units that provide much of the services. But very often we're dealing with families, and within that family, they may touch upon all of these units. We might have a suspected situation where a children's being neglected, coming to school, maybe dirty or whatever the case is. We might have a juvenile who's engaging in delinquent behavior. We might have a child in the waiver program who's suffering from developmental disabilities. We might have a mother or father who's suffering from AODA or mental health. We might have an elder in the family somehow that maybe is being abused or neglected. And then we have these sort of meetings and we talk about how can we best serve this family. And where I come in is as they review the situation, we talk about what's going on in that family unit. Sometimes they want some formal involvement, meaning do we get a formal court order for the child? Do we get a court order for that juvenile? Do we get maybe a mental health commitment order for mom or dad? Do we look at something for the elder if an elder exists? That's where I come in and we talk about, how can we get our foot in the door, so to speak, and then we can review the various situations and maybe come up with a plan to how we can get our foot in the door and help some of these families. So that's kind of where I come in sometimes. They sort of tell me what's going on in those households, and I offer what I think, legally speaking, we could potentially do. I did want to circle back to mental health commitments. Some people think, and this happens a lot, they have a loved one in the community who's maybe suffering from mental illness, or maybe they're suffering from some alcohol or drug addiction. And they'll call me or call the departments, I'm sure. We've done everything we can. We need help for them. We can't just grab people off the street and put them in an institution. We can't do that. There's a specific legal criteria for doing that. You can be mentally ill out there, and as long as you're not harming anybody or yourself, there's nothing we can do about it. Similarly, if you have a drug or alcohol problem, you're an alcoholic, you're an addict, you're in your house, you're doing your own thing, it's not bothering me. There's nothing legally you can do that. Now, certainly we can arrest you if you have some illegal substances. What you need to be is, not only do you have to have one of those things, mentally ill or drug dependent, or if there's an alcohol situation, you need to have that, but you have to be dangerous. You have to be dangerous to yourself or to others, either through suicidal behavior, for instance, or homicidal behavior, or if your behavior is such that you just can't care for yourself. You're wandering out in the cold and not dressed, or you're leaving your stove on or something in a house or something like that. So I just wanted to make that point, because very often we do receive calls that, they want their loved one to get some help because they're suffering from mental illness, but you also have to have that dangerousness component. And finally, it has to be treatable, because the difference between the mental health group and, for instance, the adult protective service group, the adult protective services, their condition is permanent and likely to remain permanent, like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and so forth. Those would not fit within the mental health group. Those would go to the adult protective service group. I would like to tell you that I think, at least from my perspective, we have a good working relationship with the department. Perhaps they feel differently, but at least from my perspective, I feel like it's a good working relationship. I can also tell you that there are no wilting flowers in the department, and they tell me quite frankly what they feel about situations. and they're not afraid to tell me if they disagree with how I analyze the case. I've had those conversations several times, and they work very hard. They take their work very seriously. And I think they expect people like myself to also work very hard and take their cases very seriously. And so I do. I try to. I understand that I get the benefit of sitting in my office and I look at paper. They actually have to go into these homes and see these people and interact with children and adults and elders who are struggling. And it's easy for me to look at a piece of paper and read the situation and say, well, maybe there's nothing we can do. They actually see that situation. So I always have to remind myself of that. But they are working hard for you. I want to tell you that. When they say they need staff, I agree with that sometimes. They are working hard. It seemed like 2020 was a good year overall. It seems like things were stable. This last month has been a challenging month, and they've been working hard. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be certainly happy to answer your questions.
Well, thank you for coming.
I have a question. When you say that they have to also be dangerous to
Yes.
remove someone, does that apply to a child as well?
So we can, like for children, if they're suffering from mental illness, are you saying? Right. So the same criteria is applied. So if a child we believe suffers from some mental illness, they also have to be a danger to themselves or to others, and their condition has to be treatable. Then we can pursue a medical commitment. With children, though, I think it's 13 or 14 years of age, a parent can admit them to a facility, quote unquote, voluntarily. You're admitting your child basically as a parent. And I think it's 14, the child, if he disagrees with that assessment, there is a process by which they can request a person from the court. I think it's the Family Court Commissioner Bilwalski, who would review that placement. The 14-year-old would say, I don't want to be here. This is wrong. Review the situation. On the flip side of that, let's say you have a 14-year-old who does have mental illness and wants to get treatment because they feel they need it, and a parent either unable or unwilling to do it, they can also petition to get treatment through that same mental health court process. That's the unique part about children. But yes, it's the same standard.
I would also add that I think,
Corinne, put on your mic, please.
What's important, I think, to add is that what Jeff is talking about is the end of the road, so to speak, legal consequence or expectation that we might have for someone. But typically, even before we call Jeff, we've done several things. In the case of a child, for example, who's maybe struggling with mental health or AODA, we've typically taken various actions, had all kinds of meetings, discussed case management strategies. And even if we end up at the Corporation Counsel's office and we don't have a legal strategy, oftentimes, I would say the same for adults as well, we're still doing things and attempting various strategies that are just short of legal action to try and provide services that folks in our community might need. So that's in some ways why it's hard to just look at a department like ours and look at commitments for mental health or placements for children, because oftentimes that's the very thing we're trying to avoid. I'll concur with what Jeff said in that it's, typically a professionally, responsible and appropriate agreement or disagreement we're having in our conversations, and those things typically go well. There isn't a lot of authoritative type stuff that happens either way. It's a consensus in some ways that we're trying to build about cases, but oftentimes what we're trying to avoid is calling Jeff. We're trying to attempt strategies and resolutions that don't require legal action. So we have some ability to work with folks in a way that is voluntary.
Okay. Any other questions for him? Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, then we're moving on to the update
Thank
for
you.
our director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, before Mr. Wisnicki takes off, or if he doesn't take off again, I just want to reinforce the involvement that Mr. Wisnicki has regarding the program. He's been here for well over a decade. He understands how the law interacts with this department and has been a very strong partner in helping us to address some of these issues, which are difficult to do, as he said, because sometimes from a legal standpoint, you really don't have a lot of options, but sometimes having the law behind you can help to convince folks to get involved in a program, because what we can do is we can say, if you're not willing to do this, we then may have to go the legal route. So we can play it both from a good cop, bad cop kind of standpoint. And the whole purpose of it is to get them the support and the help that they need. So I'm very appreciative of what Mr. Wisnicki does for the department. I wanted to touch base with what Corinne had said previously, as well as a few others. We do have just recently a bunch of upheaval within the department. As you had well known, Karina Dantoin, she has left, and yes, we are working to fill that position. We do know that a employee will be leaving in the behavioral health unit. We also know that a person will be leaving in the CLTS unit, as well as within the coming months, we will have 2 behavioral health staff that will be on maternity leave. Oh, she's not going to now? Oh, I saw that. Oh, you were talking Jeff. Never mind. My bad. So there's a lot of change that's happening within the department, and some of that is just life choices. Some of that is pay and wages. And so, as always, we're going to need to continue to review that and not just look at it from a pay standpoint, from a work environment standpoint, and try to make sure that we have a workplace that is welcoming for us to recruit top-notch candidates. The only other item that I have for the committee is that the executive committee on Monday night did approve the filling of the human services director position. So I will be moving forward with that. I hope to do that actually very expeditiously. I'm still looking whether I want to do that from a traditional standpoint of putting out an ad, or whether I try to do some personal recruitment of a candidate to take that position. So regardless, and what I've said to my unit managers is the ideal candidate for me, and what I've always said is that I'm looking for someone that is predominantly first and foremost from the administrative financial standpoint. We've made a lot of great strides, but we do have some top-notch unit managers. So therefore, I would like to see a human services director that's focused more on the financial and administrative standpoint. Then if I can add more into that, yes, would I like them to understand how a human services department operates? Absolutely. And then if I can have the cherry on the banana split, I would love to have someone then who understands how operations happen here in Kewaunee County. Part of my concern is I believe that we have a department have really turned things around, and I'm really happy about that. And that is an absolute testament to the staff. I had given them a challenge, and both the unit managers and the staff have embraced that challenge and have done very well. I do believe there's still some things that need to be done, and therefore there's a little bit of concern, anxiety, I'm not sure the exact right word to use, that I wouldn't want to step away too quickly, but I also know that from a department standpoint, more of my time is actually going to be taken away from the human services department, especially with the jail project and the jail issue being at the forefront for most of this year. And so I've spent a year in this position in interim, and therefore I do think it's time to move on. But there are still some things that I would like to see occur within the department. I would have that conversation with the Human Services Director as to what are still some of my expectations. But I do believe that we can find a quality candidate, and I do believe that the unit managers and the staff will continue to embrace those changes and do the phenomenal work that they do every day. Other than that, I have nothing else unless there's questions, Madam Chair.
Linda?
Some of those staff members that are leaving, are they county employees or contractor?
There's both. The one in the behavioral health unit is a contract employee, and we already know from CPS that it was a contract employee. We know the one from CPS was a county employee, and so we've got that there.
Is that the one that's contracted? Is that the one that you wanted in the budget this year? Or was that a different position?
What I first did in the budget was a 1.0 FTE in the CLTS unit. But at least from my standpoint, both as Human Services Director and as County Administrator, there are roughly, at least from a case manager standpoint, there are 3 positions that are currently contracted. 2 in behavioral health and 1 in CLTS. And so what I wanted to do, and will more than likely do in this upcoming budget again, is try to transition them from being contracted positions to county positions, but to do that in a stepped process. So I want to do one position per year until we get to those 3. And again, the argument that I have always said is that these employees, for all intents and purposes, are county employees. We tell them who their clients are. We tell them when they have to work. In many ways, we evaluate them. We oversee them. So the only difference is we've hired them through Helping Hands. So there is a step away in that respect. But if we're really going to be honest, they are, like I said, for the most part, county employees. So let's make them county employees. Other questions? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, are there any other items to talk about besides setting our next meeting?
No, I guess the only other part that I put in there, and it's a little strange that we had a meeting that's less than an hour, but part of it is that from a financial standpoint, we are only doing January and February, of which a lot of the revenues and the like actually revert back to the previous year. And so therefore, to do any type of projections for 2021 would be wags. In other words, just big guesses. And so therefore, not really what I want to do for the committee. And as for the other items, I think they've all been talked about. And as we go, month to month to month, I don't know that we will spend as much time on the different data and reports that we give you. And part of the reason why is because now that we've had almost a year of this, these are numbers that you can see from month to month to month. And only if there are outliers or something that needs to be brought to the committee's attention, we'll do that. But otherwise, if we're not seeing large swings within those numbers, then we won't really report on them. They're just there for your reference.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, next meeting is scheduled for April 15th at 8 a.m. Is that okay? Okay, then the only other thing is a motion to adjourn. Tim, Doak makes second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?